Great. Well, thanks everyone. Welcome everyone. And thank you PMD Alliance for continuing to host. And, we continue to stay a bit physically distanced, but hopefully we'll all be in able to see each other soon, and people are getting vaccinated and staying safe still out there, and, continuing to kind of battle the pandemic in whatever way we can, trying to socially connect and exercise and get out in nature and all those good things. So I'm excited to, again, continue to honor and celebrate Parkinson's Awareness Day, month, week, whatever you want to call it. And I think for somebody like Mike Okun, who has become, a great friend and amazing colleague and a great inspiration, I think it's Parkinson's Awareness Year all day, every day, 365, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, right? So I'm excited to bring you Mike, who is just such a world leader and a true inspiration, because I think, everything he does is really from the heart to care about Parkinson's patients and everything that matters to them and the people that love them. So welcome, Mike. He has a million accolades, so I don't have to bore on, but he is the chair of neurology on top of everything else that he does at the University of Florida. He has been just a remarkable person to collaborate with over the years. And in the last year, we've been writing a blog weekly at parkinsonsecrets.com. So we urge you to check that out. And I wanted to welcome you, Mike. And I think you spent the morning doing something very cool, talking to the World Health Organization about Parkinson's disease. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that and, teach us what went on there behind those closed doors.
Sure. Well, it's an honor, to be on PMD Alliance. I love the PMD Alliance, and so you all are doing really, really cool stuff. And so I want to make sure that that everybody knows that you can't do all this alone. And so having great organizations like this makes a huge difference. And Indu mentioned that she and I have been writing on this blog. It's been a lot of fun, and we've interviewed a lot of experts, and we've gotten a lot of interesting answers and insights that I have been somewhat surprising, sometimes surprising in a good way, sometimes surprising in a shocking way, and sometimes surprising in a way we don't know how to interpret. So it just shows you, if you don't ask a lot of questions, which I think Dr. Subramanian is great at asking questions, you won't get the answers and the insights. It turns out that during this COVID-19 crisis, we were scheduled to be in Lausanne, Switzerland, which is just one city over from where the World Health Organization is located, for a little retreat. It was the first time that the World Health Organization was going to weigh in on Parkinson's disease, and so it was going to be a Parkinson's disease summit. And there are branches, many of you may not be aware of this, but the World Health Organization is not just about infections and not just about vaccines. They do a lot of work across multiple diseases, and they have a philosophy that is really consistent with a multidisciplinary approach. They don't look at a single country, and so they want to look at a disease across multiple countries, across what's happening in the world. And they are very data driven, and they want practical solutions to problems. And so there's a very small group of us that have begun writing on a kind of a position-ish kind of paper, and so we've been passing that around for a year or so, and then getting together now, groups of us from all sorts of different countries, to talk about the data, where things are, and understanding that our numbers are not even good. And so, I don't want to shock anybody, but a lot of times we show you all these numbers of where Parkinson is, and most experts agree that those are underestimates for a number of different reasons. And I'll give you one that was discussed this morning. In sub-Saharan Africa, and if the average age is just now getting to around 60 in some of those countries, and the average age of Parkinson is over 60, in most cohorts, then how can you estimate Parkinson's disease in a population like that? If there's no treatment and people are expiring fast because there's no treatment in a lot of countries, how could you be actually estimating the true prevalence? If there's no internet access, if there's no ability to get data, you can't use all these fancy technologies to count people. And so these are the kinds of issues we're talking about. We're going to be talking tomorrow about pesticides, chemicals, and other toxins across different countries, but we're taking a holistic approach. Larry Gifford is our person with Parkinson who's joining us. So I'm most proud of having a person with Parkinson in the room with us to help guide us on the conversations. And there's people from all over, people I've met and know, and people that I don't know. And so it's cool. And there's a whole bunch of people that do things that I couldn't even begin to understand, like how they do it and what they do from the World Health Organization. So I think it's really good news for the Parkinson community that that a global organization at that level is now weighed in and has realized that the numbers are rising so rapidly that we really need to start to coordinate and figure out some practical solutions. And so it's good news the World Health Organization is in. We will try to be nice to them and not piss them off because we really want them to continue. And they're really nice people too. So we really want that cooperation. So
that's amazing. Well, I think it's a lot of work and advocacy just to get in that door or in the virtual room. So I think, applaud you for being persistent. I know you've been persistent. A lot of folks are just, hoping that, just recognizing the fact that, Sunday was World Parkinson Day is just for these organizations like the World Health Organization will just, lend us some more sort of weight as a disease like this should. And so really applaud that advocacy. And is there a neurologist or neurologists that work at the World Health Organization? Or what are the kind of people that you're interfacing with there?
Yeah, so I'm not sure, you never know like what everybody's, like in a short form like that, what everybody's training is or are. I'm not sure that they have a neurologist, like on this, but they have multiple people from multiple different spheres, and there are doctors and there are toxicologists, like super smart people that it's like, if we had the resources, we would probably have a bunch of these people around us, but we're too busy talking about Parkinson. But you actually do need to get people who are experts in occupational health and occupational exposures and, world-class toxicology people that have done this in cancer and been there in infectious diseases and can ask the questions that we're not even thinking to ask. So I think it's another testament to bringing new people in. So neurologists are nerds, and I feel like if you get too many nerds in a room, you're not going to have as much fun. So it is fun because there's a whole bunch of people. So I'm actually hoping for less neurologists and more scientists, and also just scientists that do other things. And one of the great things about COVID-19, if there are great things, one of the things that's notable to me is I've had more conversations with other people who are outside of Parkinson and outside of neurology. And that's been very enlightening for me. And, it's almost like, you live in this tunnel, and you just don't see outside of your tunnel. And so I think, one of the great things when a global, crisis happens is you begin communicating with all these people that do all these things that you don't know. And then that, can help and synergize your own efforts. And so I think that's a silver lining that is an intangible that people don't talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody's written here, the world needs more nerds, less bullies. Go nerds.
Yeah.
I think I love the nerdiness of neurology, but I do think that the sort of vision of people outside of our field and being able to connect and share like-minded ideas and find solutions that are innovative require, really going outside of just the same people that we all talk to all day long. And so I think that is, something that I know you and I have done a little bit with the blog as well, as think about outside the box things. So just to on the note of COVID, wanted to give you a minute or two. I know we've been writing blogs about the vaccines and stuff, and also about, I think there's been a sense that maybe COVID has, some things that look like, early Parkinson's with the sense of smell being affected and things like that. Maybe you could just speak to, number one, your thoughts on the vaccine campaign and what patients should do with Parkinson's in terms of that. And we'll definitely, link our blog and the sort of chart that was made about the vaccines, which is, constantly being updated by you, Mike. And then also number two, about your thoughts about, Parkinsonism coming out of COVID and how we're going to follow this along.
Yeah, so first on the vaccine front, I think that it's really important again to think globally. And when we think globally, let's say the world was perfect and everybody could get vaccinated in the United States. That doesn't solve the problem. We have a world problem, and it's going to continue to seed and continue to spread. And so, as hard as it is for us sometimes to think about, thinking about ourselves first, we really do need to begin, particularly as more vaccines become available, to think more globally. The second point is that viruses in general, the machinery, I mean, you learn this in grade school. I've been doing a lot of science homework with my daughter during the pandemic. And you learn, about the machinery of viruses and how they work. And, evolutionarily, the way that they're designed is, to keep mutating, right? So they'll stay alive, right? And they can change each time that they mutate. And so if you let them hang around long enough, they'll keep mutating. That's normal. Like, we knew this was going to happen. Now, most of the people, even in BioNTech and Pfizer and J&J and Moderna, all thought it would be 2022 before they got the vaccines out. So they're way ahead of like where we thought we would be, which is really good. These corona types of viruses can mutate pretty easily. So we see the B1 variant, the UK variant. You're watching the news, maybe some of you are from the UK, you're like, oh, they got a variant. That is now the predominant variant in the US. I mean, so the stronger variants will take over. And so we have to be sensitive, like as we move along, that it's not just getting ourselves vaccinated, but it's also taking care of the world and thinking about spread. And the fact that if we let this hang around for a long time, it's going to keep getting us. We've got to play the end game, and we've got to close out and do all the things that we need to do. Having said that, we now have some data. Before we did not have data, and now we have data. You and I, Dr. Subramanian, we've blogged about this with the Iowa group from the Carver College of Medicine in Iowa City, where they looked at claims records, and you can see that if you check into the hospital without a vaccine, this was before vaccines, 1 in 3 people in a very large group there were not checking out of the hospital. Okay, so very high mortality and morbidity for Parkinson when you get hospitalized. The notable thing about the vaccines is whether you get J&J or whether you get Pfizer or whether you get Moderna, that the hospitalization rate goes way down almost to zero, and the mortality rate also goes down to almost zero. And so this is super important for somebody with Parkinson. We should respect everybody's views, and we talk about vaccine hesitancy. And part of the problem is the way we're talking to each other. I think we should always start the conversation by saying, like, I totally respect your views. Like, if you don't want to get the vaccine, I totally respect your views. And the other person should say, you want to get the vaccine, I totally respect your views. You should always start your conversations from, mutual respect and exchange. And honestly, it's up to us to just provide the education, the data, the safety data. And you see even the safety data with young women in the Johnson & Johnson vaccine comes out, and there has to be a little pause here. It's a small statistical blip. It will not affect the effectiveness of the vaccine. But this is what we did in polio. And during polio in the 1950s, the Cutter industrial complex, there was a famous stoppage of a polio vaccine as it went out too. This is exactly what we should be doing. Okay. And people that have vaccine hesitancy should know that we are doing this. This is why we're doing it, to make sure we're protecting everybody and making sure it's as safe as possible. It's very clear the Moderna and the Pfizer safety records are outstanding given the amount of time and the amount of vaccine that's out there, so far. We have small numbers on this J&J. For anybody who's gotten it, don't feel bad. It's going to work just fine. If you get any of these symptoms like headaches or symptoms that might be traceable to a blood clot, then you definitely should seek attention. But it's extremely rare. But it's something that it's up to us to protect protect people. And so I think, the faster we can come to getting more people who are willing to get vaccinated. And if we got to continue with our masks and distancing, and we got to be sensitive that this is a global issue. Then we're not going to get back to normal unless we totally understand that if we let COVID hang around, it's going to keep mutating on us. And it's going to be like that arcade game that you may have played as a kid called Whack-A-Mole, where you whack the thing down and then the next one comes up and then you whack that one and the next one. You're going to keep playing Whack-A-Mole unless you come up with a consistent global strategy. And just the last point on Parkinson is, we completely respect your point of view, whether you want to get the vaccine or not. But we just want to make sure that you hear us when we give you the data. Like the mortality data is so high. We just want to make sure that you're making that choice. So the mortality is sky high, if you don't get the vaccine with Parkinson compared to if you do. So we just want you to be aware of that. So you're making a choice, a conscious choice, and we completely respect your choice. But I think a lot of people are not even getting the data correctly, that's specific to their group, because it takes time to get that data. But we're now starting to see it in Parkinson, so we can give you more than a hand wave. We can give you a little more specific, and I think that should make people feel a little better.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure, there were 3 questions in there. I'm not sure I got all 3.
So the last question was, is your sense that COVID, getting COVID, if you didn't have Parkinson's, let's say, and you had lost your sense of smell, and, there was a sense that the virus seems to go to areas of the brain that, may cause Parkinson's. What's your sense of reading that and sort of our vigilance as a Parkinson's community moving forward with this sort of, viral tropism, Parkinsonism kind of link? What's your sense of that?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think at this point, it's it's interesting, and I think one of the points. Let me just back up. This point of the smell loss that Dr. Subramanian brings up is pertinent because it reminds us there are so few diseases that start with smell loss. And Parkinson just happens to be one of those diseases, right? And so it raises that link. Oh, interesting. So it does something to those smell cells called the olfactory cells. So is this, going to be related to Parkinson or cause Parkinson disease later? Or is it just maybe how it's transmitted? We don't understand that at all. And not only that, the smell cells are stunned. They're not gone. And so people get their smell back. If you lose your smell from a closed head injury, from a trauma, like maybe you're in a car accident, you don't get your smell back. But if you get COVID-19, you get your smell back. And there's a lot of speculation that some forms of Parkinson may start with something traveling up through the nasal mucosa, through those smell cells up to the brain as one of the mechanisms. And so that overlap has been on everyone's mind. Has it been proven, that there are going to be more cases of Parkinson associated with this virus than not? Hasn't been proven. And we can look back at influenza, and there were, Parkinson cases that were, associated to the influenza outbreak. And if you want a great old movie, look up Robin Williams' Awakening. That's post-flu. That's a post-flu syndrome. Also, there was sleeping sickness and von Economou sickness. Some of you may have heard that from the flu epidemic in the 1920s, and some people got Parkinson from that. So we need to get more data. We need to get more of what we call the pathology, the actual tissue specimens from folks who have had it, and follow people forward to see, whether we're going to see an increase. And the last thing I'll tell you is just a kind of a funny story, and that's that there were these 2 Harvard neurologists named Schwab and Pascanzar, and they came up with this idea that all Parkinson was caused by the flu, from that flu pandemic in the 1920s. And they decided that it was going to disappear. Like once these people died off, Parkinson would disappear. And they were written up in, I think, either Life or Time magazine. I think it was Life. And, and they were hot shots and everything. And they bet, in that Life magazine article, they bet people, a case of scotch for any case of Parkinson that you could show them that that was not related to the flu. But they conceded, later in print, they did concede that after many cases of scotch, that they gave up their hypothesis. It was not all due to the flu. So it's an unknown, and it makes me, with this COVID long haul syndrome, it makes me like happy for myself to decide to get vaccinated, because I don't want to worry about what's going to happen to me down the road, or to my kids down the road, and to my family members. And so that is a worry, but there's nothing yet that, there's cases, obviously, but not enough yet for us to be sure there's any relationship. It's just sort of kind of like a scary thought that, like we're all thinking about it. Yeah. But those of you that have Parkinson, I have news for you. News flash, cat's out of the bag. You have Parkinson's disease, have some good food, you're not going to do anything to prevent Parkinson's disease. So you don't have to worry. That's one less worry that you have.
Very interesting. I mean, I think it's such a rich topic for so many questions that are unanswered still. There's been a question or two about people, and I think some comments in the chat here about when people have gotten the vaccination, especially the second dose, that there was sort of some transient symptoms that worsened. Have you been seeing that? What's your experience been?
So we've been looking at this, and this came up as a question in a Facebook Live we did for the Parkinson Foundation last week. And, there hasn't been any large, statistical, data to suggest this. We've definitely heard, a fair number of stories, more than a handful of stories of people that are getting worse, particularly after the second shot. But we also take care of people here at this facility, at the University of Florida, Dr. Subramanian at UCLA's Great Medical Center, who are getting the same exact worsening symptoms regardless of what diagnosis they have. And so we suspect that it's agnostic, that the virus is agnostic, and it's just knocking everybody down. However, with Parkinson, you get lucky, because with Parkinson disease, you already have a condition that stress, anxiety, and sleep deprivation make it worse. So I'm joking when I say you're lucky. Well, the point here is that if you get a shot, if you get a vaccination, that's a stressor on your system. Oftentimes increases your temperature. Some people even get a fever, because the immune system kicks up, and that's what you want to happen. Some people don't. But stress, anxiety, sleep deprivation, and shots count, as driving those systems can worsen. And, almost everything that we've seen around the shot, in fact, everything I've seen has all been transient, not lasting more than a day. It's maybe sometimes a week or two, but we haven't really seen the big shocker that, like we'd be like, oh, this stinks, like you're going to get the shot, but it's going to make your Parkinson worse. We haven't seen that, and we've vaccinated a lot of people. Yeah, I agree. I think we've had it at the VA actually since early January, and we've vaccinated most of our patients with Parkinson's. And I think often with the second shot, maybe a week or two of symptoms that may get worse. And, I think it's good to plan for that, and then, but the sense is that people are getting back to baseline. And I think the risks of not getting the shot outweigh the benefits of getting the shot. So I think, are outweighed by getting the shot. So I think we want to get everyone vaccinated as quickly as possible. And I think somebody is asking if we're collecting data. And I think many of our centers are kind of collecting data, some more anecdotally and some, I think, more rigorously. But I think there's been a lot of attention paid in the Parkinson community to the effects of COVID, the long haul, sort of effects as well in our populations, as well as the vaccine stuff as well. There's been an interest, Mike, about your paper, the seminar paper about the Lancet. I think Sue here has been asking a number of questions to kind of, there's a lot of information there. Kudos to you for writing that with the team. Boss, et cetera. And so I know that it sort of dabbles in many aspects of, that, then I think a lot of things were touched on that I really want to commend you for. One, I will say, is that you guys mentioned specifically women and Parkinson's as a community of patients that have different
presentations and need to be focused on. I think that was something that I really shout out. The disparities, I think, was focused on the unmet needs of communities, both in North America, but also worldwide, that are not getting good care, and the concern for that and needing to do better. Another thing that I was excited to see was a paragraph, actually, a small paragraph, but a little paragraph on lifestyle and the need and the patients pushing for more, focus on that lifestyle intervention and guidance. So basically non-pharmacological kind of things. There was a lot about the multidisciplinary team that I liked. There was, it was a very beautiful paper really highlighting non-motor issues, chemicals that are neurochemicals that were outside of dopamine, a lot of, current sort of, I think, highlights that were really, really very notable. So I really think it was a very long, very robust paper. What were your takeaways for, the sort of bottom line and maybe surprises when you looked at, what you put together? Sometimes you write a paper and you're like, oh, wow, like this is something that was unique.
Well, I mean, the first unique thing was, it's the first time in a long time that I can remember that a journal would allow us to have 20 print pages for any topic. And so, we live in this society where, insurance companies want you to see people in 5 minutes, and journals want you to say it in, less than 2,000 words, and so this is thousands and thousands of words in it. And they allowed us to put in so many figures and really try to give a comprehensive tour de force. What I thought was notable was they let me or us, Christine Klein and Bastian Bloom, were the other two co-authors on this, slip in. I'm always saying the person with Parkinson is the sun and everybody should orbit around them. And so to actually get that into a major journal, I thought that was a moment, like a moment of victory, like for many people with this disease and many people seeking the therapies, just to have a major medical journal, really show that to people and validate that this is, the approach that there are so many issues, both motor and non-motor and social and just, lots of things that impact your life. And so I thought it was a great victory to be able to talk about those things. They allowed us to slip a table in that about things that are true and things that are kind of partially true that people say. And I don't know if people notice that. So, like to slip something like that into a major medical journal was kind of a fun thing, but just, like to be able to talk about some of those things that get bent, when the truth gets bent, and do it in a very, transparent and open way. But, we also have some nice summary figures looking at, like what are all the different therapies that are coming, so one of the last figures is on that and how they work, how we figured out, like we're trying to target different aspects of the Parkinson circuitry. And, this realization and real-time color in this, you can see that Parkinson isn't just a disease of dopamine. And I know we say that a lot, but I think we really hammered that message home with one of the figures, just showing all the receptors and how it works. And so it should make people who have depression and anxiety and other symptoms, feel like better, this isn't just you're having depression because you're depressed about having this disease. You're depressed because of the disease, because of the biology, because of the changes in these chemicals. So I think it gave us a chance to kind of bring a lot of things together. And, you just, in modern medicine and in these modern journals and per page stuff, you never really get a chance to say all the things that you would want to say in one place. And trust me, there was more that we wanted to say and got cut out. It was even longer than that. And the work took over a year to write. And we went through all the papers very fastidiously, and we voted. We gave them numbers on each of the papers, and we voted, and like who was going to be included, who wasn't, and what the quality of the papers and discoveries were. And so it was quite a process, but it is up for free for the next 30 days is what I'm told. And I think we tweeted out if you use Twitter or Facebook, that link is open for 30 days. So you generally don't get free access to the Lancet. It's all another marvel of modern medicine. It costs money to get information, right? So, but it's up there now for 30 days. And it came out coincident on World Parkinson Day. So that was pretty cool. So the only thing I can, the only thing I can really say to everybody who's on the call today is if you decide to read it, don't do it in one sitting. Just say, okay, I'm going to read this one section and sit down and think about it, a couple pages on diagnosis or a couple pages on genetics or whatever, and think about it, because it is very dense. And if you are a person with disease and you're not an expert, even for a neurologist, I would say it's dense. It's probably, it's very comprehensive. So I just would try to think about them in sections so you don't get overwhelmed with it.
Yeah, no, I think it's a beautiful, summary and very robust place to also reference from for other things. And, just hats off. It was probably a lot of work. I did try to read it all this morning, and it was a lot. So I might have to go back. But I think, great, article. And I think we'll try to link maybe through Facebook. Andrea, you can find it. There's like a Twitter link that I also couldn't find it the normal way. So we'll try to link it here. And I think it's great that you thought about that, because I know a lot of patients want to take a look and get that free access. And I've been noticing on Twitter, there's a lot of patient interest and excitement about being in the center. And finally, the sun, the representation of that and everyone else orbiting around, which I know is a quote that you use a lot. So definitely awesome. So a few other questions. So I know one thing that we've been excited about as well is the red card kind of campaign that you guys have been doing, and also the Ending PD book, and then the formation of the Avengers. Maybe you could tell us, because you did mention Larry Gifford as sort of the patient voice. Tell us a little bit about the sort of timeline of the Ending PD kind of idea, that sort of collaboration, and then the formation of the Avengers, and then the latest campaign, and how patients can get sort of linked into that.
Yeah, so well, first I just put the link, like a shortened version of the link, because some of these links are like 8 years long, all the lines. So that's a shortened version of the link. It'll be up for probably 3 more weeks. If you want to copy that into your browser, click it and download the PDF before it goes away, put it on your computer. So we wrote this book, Ending Parkinson's Disease, and you all were kind enough to listen to myself and others of the authors, Ray Dorsey and Todd Shearer and Boston Bloom, talk about this. And, a couple of, really, cool things came out of that experience. One was we realized that the pact to ending a disease, prevent, advocate, care, and develop new treatments and research, that the pact wasn't going to happen unless enough people came together. And again, this is a global equation, enough to cause what Malcolm Gladwell, a famous author, would call a tipping point, enough that the field tips and something actually happens. And, so we stop talking and something changes. And so in order for it to tip, in my opinion, one of the key components is the advocacy component, and we need more of a grassroots groups of people. So all the people at the PMD Alliance and everybody else all around the world that has, this as an issue, we sum our voices. We become very powerful if we sum our voices. And so the PD Avengers grew out of this. Larry Gifford, who's in National Canadian Broadcasting, who is 49 years old and has Parkinson. He was our representative at the World Health Organization meeting this morning. He leads this group, and he told us this morning at the WHO that there are now 3,000 members of that, which is awesome, but it's still not enough. And as part of that, they've taken up the pact, and people have been signing that petition for prevent, advocate, care, and develop treatments. And we decided to focus our message and to try to send something to the White House. And so we came up with this red card campaign, called Give a Dime for Parkinson. And we modeled it after the March of Dimes, or the Infantile Paralysis Foundation for polio. And at first we were actually going to have people mail diamonds, but not diamonds, but dimes to the White House. And it turns out that if you mail dimes to the White House, that's illegal. They no longer accept currency. So you can't pay the White House anymore. There is a conflict of interest in doing that. So that ended after the polio infantile paralysis era. But so we printed these cards that have, pictures of dimes on them, and the sealer has a dime. And we tried to hone our message in onto three things, like what are three things we all can agree on, right? So we, on this call now, predominantly, I'm going to guess it's mostly American, except for Dr. Subramanian, who's Canadian, maybe a few Brits, a few people from Malta, but predominantly, let's say North American group. It's hard to get us all to agree, on politics, on policy, but what are three things that we can agree on? So number one, let's ban pesticides and chemicals that we know study after study have shown a strong association to the later onset of Parkinson. Let's use different chemicals. Let's not use chemicals anymore that cause Parkinson. And that may knock down our burden of Parkinson in itself, because we're not even sure how many people, are affected by that. So I think we can all agree on chemicals like paraquat and trichloroethylate or TCE. Two, we need to make the change that happened with COVID-19 for telemedicine access, telehealth, permanent. And people don't understand that is not permanent. That's a temporary COVID-19 thing. We have to lobby to make sure that stays permanent. Now, where Dr. Subramanian is born in Canada, they have permanent telehealth, which, they're way ahead of us. In fact, they're the leaders in this in the world. And but we have to lobby, or else we're going to lose this. And I think taking care into the home, not only for Parkinson, but for wellness and for mental health, is going to be super important in this disease and in others. And so that's the second point we thought we could all agree on. The Canadians already agree on that. They're already past that. And the third point is we are calling for an increase in research funding from the National Institutes of Health, that our National Institutes of Health is the largest funder of research in the world. And we're asking for an increase of 10 times. Where did we get that number? Well, we studied other diseases, and particularly HIV, and to change the trajectory in HIV from, basically a deadly disease to something that's chronic and livable. I often say when I was an intern on the wards, you'd go to the HIV ward and it was horrible. And we didn't have treatments, and it was terrible. But to change that trajectory, it took $3 billion a year of NIH funding. We're putting $200 million a year into Parkinson. So even if we went 10 times to 2 billion, we wouldn't be at the amount. But 10 times 10 sounds like a good round number. I think we can all agree on it. So 10 times it was. And so let's ban chemicals and pesticides that we know are associated in multiple, they're incontroversial, that we know in multiple papers have been shown. Let's keep telehealth. Let's bring healthcare into the home, and let's keep it there. And let's increase that research funding by 10 times so we can bend the curve and change the trajectory, create some inflection for Parkinson. So that was a red letter campaign. Our first goal was 10,000. We blew that away, thanks to everybody. And we're past 25,000 now, and now we're going for 100,000. We just keep crawling. So we'll see. Hopefully it'll make the White House press room at some point. Jen Psaki will get a question on the red letters, and she'll have to say, "Oh, I'll come back to you tomorrow. I'm not sure what you're talking about," or she'll say, "No, you guys have been, you folks have been, killing us with all these red letters, the White House room." So.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, so amazing. So people are asking how to get a supply, where they can learn more about this. Maybe Andrea, you can link it. And can they actually get like a few of them, or what's sort of the mechanism of distribution?
Yeah,
so they got like one for themselves, and I got one as well and mailed it in. But
you can go to endingpd.org and download it and print it and send it. If you want to get a whole bunch, then Ray Dorsey at the University of Rochester has a person that works for him called Alistair Glidden, who helps to coordinate that. Ray, myself, Boss, Todd Shearer, we donate all the proceeds of the book, to charities and to putting back this effort of mailing all these letters. I think we've spent a heck of a lot of money mailing all the letters, but so I think part of it just depends on how much money we have left from what we got paid to do the book, because none of us have taken any great vacations off the book. So we put it all back in. So I'll give you all at PMD Alliance the contact information to Alistair Glidden, and if people want to contact him directly. But at some point, we'll probably run out of the bank and have to start going the old-fashioned way. And unless a whole bunch more people start buying the book, and then we'll get another advance, and then we'll buy more cards. So such is life.
Yeah. I love it though. I think it's so beautiful. And I've seen some great pictures of people's nieces or whoever, their dogs, with the so I think anything we can do to, take pictures, put them in social media, make it a thing, somebody's yoga class, I think all did it together. And I think it's, so important. So I know we spent a lot of time talking about advocacy, Mike, and I think we also talk about, the secret sauce. We always, you and I talk about, what is the secret sauce that leads to patients doing well? What do you think? So I think we've been talking about this, and you and I talk I think once a week about different things, and how to make, help our patients through the pandemic, keep them socially connected, keep them motivated, keep them exercising. So a year into this pandemic, now looking back at the year, what have we learned from this year? What have you learned, on a personal level? And then also, I'd like to ask you some questions about the future as well, after we've talked a little bit about the
so well, first let's back up to the wellness question. And this is one that I'm really not sure I have the answers on, wellness and how to really create wellness within the Parkinson community. But I do co-host this blog with Dr. Subramanian, who's an expert on wellness. So I know that you're here interviewing me, but I'm going to actually flip the microphone and just ask you, what do you think, Dr. Subramanian? What is the path forward for wellness in our Parkinson community? Teach us.
Yeah. Thank you for asking that and surprising me with a question, but always on my toes with you, Mike. So I think that, I was really confused, I think, about the topic of wellness. I didn't know what it meant. I think, there's been some overbranding, overselling, over-commercializing. People, have it in their mind that wellness means like a expensive spa membership, or like a trip to Bora Bora, or, some cute yoga pants and a new yoga mat. And I think that what I defined, and actually was excited to be able to give a talk for Ray Chowdhury's group at King's. And he actually asked me to talk on what constitutes wellness in Parkinson's disease in 20 minutes or less. And so wellness is actually an active pursuit of things, of a lifestyle that leads to a pathway to thriving. That's sort of the definition of wellness that I will adopt and have learned more about. And it's really, I think, a cool sort of notion, right? You're not just passive. It's not just a feeling of well-being. It's not just me with having been given the diagnosis of something that I'm passively having to kind of wave in the wind and everything's around me and woe is me. I'm actively going to choose things as a person, empower myself, take self-agency, self-efficacy, take control of the situation by actively choosing lifestyle choices that there is a mounting body of evidence are beneficial. So exercise is medicine. I think we all believe that. So exercise, sleep, hugely undervalued, underrecognized. We have to care more about this, and something that we should all be getting, if we can, 8 hours of sleep. Working on social connection. I think we realize how much this year has been, missing that, and how we as a nation, how we as a people, me as an individual, are just, yearning for social connection. And so I think these are things that have been missed. Diet, what you put in your body, this Mediterranean diet. There's been a growing, sort of everything that I make a choice around in my day, how I plan my day, can really impact the way that I feel and how I thrive in the end of the day with Parkinson's. And I think the mind-body connection is the last thing that I would just briefly touch on, which I think is, exciting. I've been, a big proponent of yoga, mindfulness, meditation, things like that. When Bas put his, with Rick Helmick out, the initial I can remember a year ago to almost the date, one of the first publications that talked about, sort of this hidden kind of concern of, COVID coming down and what was going to happen with this social distancing and being locked in place. It was really this concern that the motor, non-motor symptoms that were going to get worse because patients were socially isolated, they were not exercising, they were sort of, not thriving. What could we do? And it was really the winners of the day, the things that were in that diagram were really, sort of social connection through online resources, and finding ways to get mindfulness in, or meditation, getting out in nature, going for walks, being sort of, present, which is really, I think, been sold kind of and packaged in a negative way. In some, it's hard. You have to, go to a retreat and spend, 20 hours in silence every day. No, you can actually, start with small bite-sized pieces, try an app, maybe try to go for a walk in nature. These sorts of things I think can be very soothing. Listen to music, maybe, sort of disconnect a little bit from all of our social media frenzy and devices. So I think these are things, to strive for. And I think when patients feel and their families feel like they have some control over their destiny, I think that is what puts them hopefully in a better place to really thrive. And I really am enjoying that sort of definition. And I think moving forward, that's really what I want to spend my time and energy thinking about. We've been, and you have been tremendously helpful in kind of guiding this. And we've got a new collaborative going with, anyone who wants to honestly be part of it, a new website that we'll be launching called pdwellness.org. And I've been tweeting a little bit around this and really trying to get some good resources for wellness, good resources for even mental health. You had mentioned mental health. I think this is something that we put a lot of stigma on. It's part of the disease, as you mentioned. So depression, anxiety, apathy, these are part of Parkinson's. There are chemicals that are missing, they're abnormal, that lead to these feelings just from the Parkinson's disease itself. And so with the pandemic, with sort of the way that we've been having, all the stressors, I think these issues have been really not gotten enough attention. And I want to let people know that this is something important, that they need to be asking for help if they're feeling, isolated or lonely or sad or anxious. And hopefully we can give some resources that anyone can kind of go to learn more about this and what they can proactively do to help. And we've had some great speakers on this series as well. And the PMD Alliance has given us sort of a space to really develop a little bit more about mental health and all of these issues. And I thank you also, Mike, for allowing us and encouraging us to blog more about this as well. So I think, we're going to hopefully spend more time on these sorts of issues. And thank you for letting me answer that question. You're
the expert here. So. I mean, one thing just to mention is, the wellness issue. If you ever doubted that wellness was important in Parkinson's disease, enter COVID-19. I mean, it is just completely turned upside down the lives of people with Parkinson in a way that, I don't want to be discriminatory against other diseases, but I will. I mean, it's worse in Parkinson than it is for other diseases and other syndromes. And we've just seen it, every single day. And it sort of, it makes you wonder, because you're wiser once you've gone through an experience, even if the experience was not so hot, not so great, you get wiser, you get smarter the next time you go through. But, I can't help but wonder, after reading the blogs that you've written on wellness, and I know that you're going to launch a website too with another blog. I mean, I just can't help but thinking, if we had wellness plans for everyone in Parkinson, would we have done better in COVID? And is part of the wellness plan to be able to stay well even as the environment happens?
Yeah. I mean, I think some of our patients this year have told us, and we've talked about this, is that because of the disease that they're living with day in and day out, that they have had a better go at living in unprecedented times, right? That this sort of lack of ability to control the outcome of the day every day and uncertainty of the future is something that they live with. And so I've really just been so impressed with so many of our patients who've really taken this opportunity this year to be an activist, to help others, to, start new programs like the Avengers. Like I know I saw Sharon Krisher on here, who's started this mentorship program for women. I think, people are standing up and having their voices heard, and not just for themselves, but really thinking about this global sort of connection that we have. I think you said it well, with fighting COVID, we have to care about everybody on this planet because it affects us. And I think that with Parkinson's, similarly, I know that we have talked about not just our own backyards and the United States, for example, but that we, by researching more to these unmet needs of the communities that we're missing out on, worldwide sort of understanding of Parkinson's will really help us all the more to sort of find a cure for this disease and help people live better lives every day with this disease, which is what I've been sort of trying to focus more on. So yeah, and we had a doc come on, a psychologist come on Monday and talk about post-traumatic growth. And I think that that's sort of what we're all dealing with here, is a sort of sense that we are trying to emerge from this crisis, but trying to find ways to kind of connect and live for the future, hopefully with learning things about the benefits of, like you said, telehealth, the benefits of coming together as a community and seeing how they were able to push this vaccine through so quickly. So I wanted to just maybe, Mike, in the last 7 minutes we have here, have you speak to the future and what you think are the areas that you want to focus on the most in your. You do such a good job of doing it all and without seeming like stressed about any of it, but you really have have a lot of things happening, a lot of hats that you wear as a chairman, as an educator, as and one of the things actually that was mentioned that I didn't actually say is that somebody had brought up the fact that we just have a lack of enough doctors that are trained in movement disorders, and like, are we going to be able to inspire more nerds to go into this field? And I know that you, with some of the work looking back at the Aspen course, for example, and the Movement Disorders Society that was open to for free to all these resources that we're educating around to anyone who chose to sort of participate, I think is sort of this amazing first step to getting the education out there. So what are your sort of kind of next agenda items and your top priorities for 2021?
So I'm trying to in my own life, I'm trying to get my arms around the word impact. And I'm trying to remind myself that, you have to be authentic, so each of us has a certain authenticity and things that we're good at and things that we can contribute. And we have to kind of match up our authenticity and what we can bring to the table with how much impact we can have, and to try to, focus a lot of our time on those things where we think we can really change lives. And that's kind of the metric in the end of the day. And I think that comes probably with humility and time and making a lot of mistakes. I don't buy into a lot of the fights that I used to buy into when I was younger, like in the Parkinson field, like this is right, this is wrong. I mean, I like being part of the fights, don't get me wrong, but I don't think that, I don't think it's wrong for people to be trying all sorts of approaches, whether people think it's crazy or not, and for people to say, oh, don't do this, don't try this. Certainly at some point you have to, concede and say probably, too much money going to this. Now we have enough data to show that, but the reality is we're dealing with a $200 to $250 million a year research expenditure, which isn't that much. And we shouldn't be having those arguments. We should be doing a lot of experiments, expecting 90% of them to fail, but we're not doing enough experiments and we're not training enough people. If you doubled the research budget, you would double the number of trainees. You double the number of people essentially in the field working on Parkinson. If you kept doubling it, by 5 doubles and get up to $2 billion or whatever, you'd have a lot more people in. And so I think that the failures tell us as much about what's going on as the successes. And I think that because the pickings have been slim for grants and money, I think people tend to get on each other, down to the criticizing, down to the point that this was a dumb idea, or why are you doing this? And this is a waste of money. But I think we have to change our mindset that it's okay to fail, and we actually need a lot of failures and need to learn from those failures to get to successes. And so what I would like to see us do is, have a lot more, if you're a baseball fan, a lot more swings at the ball, like we're not swinging enough to even get enough runs to win the game. So I think that's something we need to focus on as a community, regardless of what the specific research is. I have my opinions, about like what I think are cool and everything, and you have your opinions, and Sarah has hers, and and so on. But I think we just need more swings. I think the advocacy really, I think the PD Avengers need to increase by a log scale. I think that group, a global group like that, if they got to a large enough voice, could really become a force, in pushing change. And then I think the prevention aspects and some of the, the other aspects, the care aspects will kind of follow. So I'm kind of, I kind of am thinking those are two things on my agenda list for 2021, 2022. If we could have an explosion of people on the grassroots, that would be cool. And if we could pump more money into research and care, that would be, I think, something that could change. And then we could stop arguing about like why we did or didn't do stuff and start dialoguing more about what we learned. So yeah, that's how I would look at it.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I mean, I think those are very important. I think so. If you're a patient or a caregiver out there, join the PD Avengers, join some advocacy. I think, putting that positive energy, again, taking some control over that sort of lifestyle choice that you make, where you spend your time, finding a purpose, finding a meaning is a huge part of that. And so, figure out what brings you meaning. If you're a grandparent, it might be connecting with your grandchild on Zoom, as somebody had mentioned. But, for some patients, it's really joining the cause. And I think the energy that I've seen this year of patients, and just the beauty of seeing, some of these folks getting up, Omatola, for example, who's now on a billboard in somewhere in the UK, like, singing these causes and people coming together. For example, Camilla Kilbane, who didn't have a clue about the African issues, came on, did a beautiful talk for me, didn't even have a topic. And I, through the series was like, let me learn about something. I told her to watch Omatola's talk. She then put together this beautiful topic and now is doing advocacy work for the African campaign of sending medicines out there. So I think these small little, connections that we can all make, collaborating together, I think breaking down those silos, working with our patient voices, and trying to, make them logarithmic, I think, and energize sort of a community as we've done with the COVID vaccine campaigns. If we can do that with anything that we're doing in the Parkinson's world, I think we can really get some stuff done. So I think, applaud you again, Mike, for all of your amazing work, amazing energy. You have been amazing mentor and friend and advocate extraordinaire. So, we will continue to work together on our blogs and all the other cool ideas. And I also think that you're very open-minded. And I think, that sort of energy of not just doing, the classic, randomized control trial approach and, having to just be very rigid and fit in a textbook, I think is some part of, the dialogue here that I think you're a huge part of. So I've really appreciated that from you as well. So anyway, well, thank you for spending the hour.
Okay.
And I will pass it back to Sarah. We will continue to host a number of great events here. It sounds like they're going to have an Ending PD book club in June. So urge people to join for that, join the Avengers, and we will continue to fight the fight. So Sarah, back to you.
Thank you so much. Oh, there was so much inspiration in this between the collaboration and the wellness conversations. And so thank you for spending your time with us. Let's give a big thank you wave to Dr. Okun and Dr. Subramanian. Thank you for spending your time with us. This was wonderful discussion. So grateful. Look forward to the next one.
Bye,
My
guys.
pleasure. Take care, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.